Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Southwest Affiliate Stroke Bootcamp series. We are excited to offer this 15-week course as a way to educate stroke coordinators in key components of their role, provide tools and resources to build and maintain successful programs, and to assist in building a large network of peers. Before we get started, we would like to go over just a few housekeeping items. To avoid background noise, all lines have been placed on mute. For questions, you can unmute your line by pressing *6 or type in the Q&A section of the WebEx. Please note you will only be able to claim your CME CE credits at the end of the 15-week series on September 27th. A copy of today's slides and any handouts will be sent to you within a week of today's call. For future webinar offerings, including the Stroke Bootcamp webinars, please visit www.heart.org/SWA quality. Now we will begin today's webinar. Alex Grace is an adult and acute care nurse practitioner at the Cerebrovascular Program Manager for a region in Colorado that includes 5 hospitals. She is primarily located at the Comprehensive Stroke Center, St. Anthony Hospital. She splits her time between patient care and program development. She has successfully led both primary and comprehensive stroke center certification preparation and site visits numerous times. She has an interest in quality improvement projects and has pursued formal training in this area. She has completed the Postgraduate Acute Neurovascular Advanced Practitioner Fellowship through NetSmart. She has partnered with bedside RNs, physicians, pharmacists, and therapists on multiple projects that have led to research studies, publications, and presentations. Most recently, she has worked on 2 book chapters, the first entitled Intracerebral Hemorrhagic Stroke and the other Stroke Coordination, Administrative, and Clinical Quality Oversight. Our second presenter is Melody Bauer. She has been the stroke coordinator at Wyoming Medical Center for 5 years and has been a nurse for 12 years. Wyoming Medical Center is a primary stroke center and has received AHA's Get With The Guidelines Go Plus Target Stroke Honor Roll Elite Plus Award for the past 4 years. Melody is a certified neuroscience registered nurse and a stroke certified registered nurse. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Dickinson State University. Melody lives in Casper, Wyoming with her husband David and a 2-year-old son. I will now turn it over to Alex.
All right, good morning, thank you. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's been a crazy week. It's the week before vacation for me, but I'm excited to be here, and I love to talk about the role of the stroke coordinator, which I gave that presentation a couple weeks ago, and I also love talking about quality improvement. So it's great to hear how popular these webinars have been. I'm glad people are hopefully finding them helpful and applicable to what we all do. In fact, we have a Colorado Stroke Coordinator meeting coming up next Thursday, and there's a request that, hey, this webinar is right before our meeting. Is there any way we can get together and all listen to it together? So it's exciting to hear that we're scheduling our days around these and people are finding them helpful. The only thing I realized just for American Heart is that I can't see any of the questions come in just since I'm on a single screen, so just stop me if I am not seeing something you're seeing. All I can see are my slides, so that should work. As a stroke coordinator, we all have many roles. I shared this with you all a couple weeks ago. We know that performance improvement, quality improvement is just one of those many roles. I am going to tell you now that whether you realize it or not, you likely have several quality improvements going on all at the same time, overlapping each other, and sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for all of the projects that we actually are constantly working on and have going on. So I know that many of you have seen this slide in presentations you've heard about stroke. If you give any lectures on stroke, usually this is a slide that's included there. But I want to start this presentation by first making a case for why you should even listen to a talk on quality improvement management, and why we all, whether we're striving for stroke certification or have already obtained it, feel like we have an ownership role in this quality improvement process. So we're used to hearing that stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, but what I'm not sure we're all aware of is that if the CDC were to include preventable medical errors as a category, as something listed on a death certificate, that would actually make stroke the 6th leading cause and medical errors the 3rd. I find this to be, fascinating is not the right word. I think it's more like appalling. It's crazy to think that if they were to report medical errors on a death certificate, it would fall as the 3rd leading cause of death. Most of us think of medical errors as a surgeon operating on the wrong knee. We hear stories like that. That's what gets in the news, or a physician missing the diagnosis of an acute appendicitis or whatever that may be. But, let's think about the world of stroke. We have RN to RN handoff of exam findings where we're sharing the deficits or disabilities that patient have. And we all know that this happens. One RN says, well, this patient has left arm weakness. They're on the phone calling up report to the ICU, and their interpretation of weakness might be their grip strength is weak, or whereas the nurse that then gets the patient on the unit comes in and sees they can't lift the arm off the bed. Well, has that weakness been clearly identified, and is the communication clear that that was a significant decline in that patient's status? Unfortunately, we've heard of some of the awful stories with the administration of TPA, where TPA was meant to be, alteplase was meant to be given and not tenecteplase, and maybe that's been mixed up. We know that there's opportunity for error when we estimate the weight versus obtaining an actual weight. We also know that there's opportunity for error when we keep pushing door to needle, get quicker, quicker, quicker. Another example, and then I'll stop with the examples, but another example in the stroke world of medical errors is that we send a patient home on Eliquis. They have new onset AFib. We're pretty determined, or we're pretty confident that that's the cause of their stroke. They show up at the pharmacy and they have a $300 copay. I'm not sure that they're going to make that payment, and they're going to be shocked with that, and instead not go on this medication that could, in the end, prevent another stroke. So in a short time, very short time, so we can allow for Melody to share an example, we're going to discuss some quality improvement theories and tools and goals, and then Melody will share a quality improvement example with all of us. All right, so we collect data, we all collect data, but do we use the data as much as we can be? And quality improvement is driven by data. These are all pretty straightforward goals, and I believe it's good to remind us of these goals that we're trying to achieve with a quality improvement project. So I'll just put these up here. You'll have access to these slides, I believe. And we're really going to go into a crash course on quality improvement. And I'm going to start by talking about who is oftentimes referred to as the father of quality improvement. This is Dr. William Edwards Deming. He's best known for his work in the U.S. that was titled A System of Profound Knowledge. And this included 4 components or 4 lenses through which we should view, quote, the world, or in our lives and our roles, through which we should view the projects in front of us, the issues in front of us, the topics we know we could improve on, what the data is telling us, to then use these 4 components or 4 lenses to look through. So I'm going to briefly go over those. The first lens is an appreciation of a system. And there's 2 pictures here that highlight that pretty well. Here's a picture depicting there's no aim, there's no system, and then, of course, here's a picture depicting, a system. Interdependent, meaning that the components of the system must be working collectively together to make a change in the outcome. Systems generally have a surface in which we interact. Maybe that's your system in your emergency department with a stroke alert. How does that system work together? And they have a substructure, the different swimmers, the different divers, whatever it is that you're talking about, that either perceive each other well and work together well, or that fall apart and you can't tell what one person's doing compared to the next. So that's the first lens that Dr. Deming is well known for. The second lens is this knowledge of variation. And basically he's saying life is variation, and variation there will be. So as part of the quality improvement team, and in order to achieve a predictable outcome, right, because that's what we all want. We want that patient who comes in, for the basic example, who comes in at midnight on Christmas Eve versus, 1 p.m. on a Monday to get the same treatment, to have the same expectations for their door-to-needle times, or whatever it is, whatever the goal is that we're trying to achieve. So in order to achieve that predictable outcome, that circle at the end, we need to understand all the input, all the variation in input and process that then ends up with that final outcome. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. The goal, as I've already discussed, will be in that goal slide, but really the goal is to decrease that variation. But first you have to take the time to understand the variation. You have to take the time that when the nurse says one doctor asked for it this way and the next doctor asked for it this way and the next one a different way, you're really understanding that that's the variation you're talking about. So to achieve a predictable outcome, you need to understand and manage everything that gets inputted and then the processes that take place after that. Variation is really a process that will result in poor predictability. So the more variation you have, the less predictable you be and the less reliable your outcome will be as well. And then also tampering occurs when changes are made without understanding the system and the sources of variation. So let me give you an example. Many of us have certain quality improvement goals, and I'll just use door to TPA as one because it's one we can all relate to. But when we understand all of the input, all of the steps that it takes to then get to the process, so all the people that are involved, all the devices that are involved to then get to the steps in which the process occurs, when we tamper with that, when we make a change without understanding this entire system, that's not what we want to have happen. So we don't want to have happen someone come to a meeting and say, hey, I've got a great idea to decrease door-to-needle times, and they throw out this idea without having taken the time to understand all the input and different processes that occur. The third lens in Deming's system is theory. So we all know and have learned the scientific method, and many of us are familiar with the tool called PDSA, or Plan, Do, Study, Act. This is a quality improvement tool, and it's based on theory that's used throughout the world really to improve process. It's not just used in healthcare, it's used in many other organizations and areas to help improve the process. There certainly are many other tools that are theory-based as well, but the point here in this third lens is the recommendation of using theory, a theory-based tool. And finally, this fourth lens is kind of the softer stuff, so it's understanding psychology. Many of us who are here on this webinar are interested, we want to learn, and we are quality improvement leaders. So while we are leading a team, we know that we have a lot to learn in this area. But not only do we have a lot to learn in quality improvement, but we need to understand the team members that we're working with. So it's best to think of those team members and think of how each of them, this really gets to think of how Jim, your ED nurse, or Brian, your nurse manager, really get down to the level of the individual personnel that are making up your team and what makes them succeed. Do they feel like they succeed when they're just being part of a team? Are they driven by success when they feel like they do a really good job? Are they the people that want, a brain pin, a certificate, a high five, a gift card, or whatever it is? Or are they driven by feeling like they're part of that decision-making process? Now, we all have these drivers, and many of us have all three. Some of them are stronger in us than others, and I'll say that for each of us it's unique and it changes over time. So what may have been our driver, 3 years ago, that reward-based drive, may be different, and now we want to have that drive that makes us feel more a part of the team. So I would just make sure that we're thinking about that when we're thinking about the people that make up our door-to-needle team, our ED team, our door-to-groin time, our door-to-transfer time, our team that we've developed to increase our dysphagia screen rates, or whatever the quality improvement project may be. Think about those people that are part of your team. And then how you approach those people, of course, depends on what their key driver is. Okay, so some final words by Dr. Deming. Really, it's quote here, understanding of profound knowledge, so understanding of all the details that go into this process is what's going to lead to transformation of management. Transformation in any organization will take place under a leader, which is many of you on this call, and the question is, how may he accomplish transformation? First, he has a theory. Second, he feels compelled to accomplish the transformation. And third, he's practical. He has a plan step by step. And it's that practicality, that plan, that we're going to then talk about in these next couple of slides. Okay, so whether you're primary stroke or comprehensive stroke or are already certified or going for certification, we all know that there's a lot of required data elements. And oftentimes those data elements, they just keep doubling, tripling from previous certifications, from previous years. I mean, we must collect over 150 data points on each stroke patient. We do analysis and distribution of those data points. Many of us use dashboards that we share at our monthly stroke council meetings. Some of us are required, as comprehensive stroke centers, are required to report out on our outcomes publicly, whether that's on our websites or publications that go out to the public. We also identify quality improvement projects because we have a new clinical practice guideline that comes out, and then that clinical practice guideline is rescinded, and we're thinking, well, what do we do with this information now? But these are all different things that change our practice, that lead us to identifying these quality improvement projects. Many of us use, and I talked about this at the stroke coordinator webinar, but we use a gap analysis to say, we're here, but we need to be here. And oftentimes it's that gap that then says, okay, we clearly need to turn this into a quality improvement project about how do we, for example, what is our plan for collecting patient satisfaction data? And let's turn that into a subcommittee and a quality improvement project. So I'm going to first start by, throughout this talk, I want to give some very practical tips to you all. And one of the things that I recommend, and many of you already have, is a physical document, a PI plan. Here are some of the, in our PI plan, we have each of these items listed as headers in this document. And not only does this document talk about how cases are identified that need to go on for further review, peer review, stroke peer review, that type of thing, but it also highlights how our PI projects identified, how our teams created, and what the quality improvement tool is that we would typically use for projects that we then identify. This is pretty small here, but I'm just going to exit out here and share with you this document. I think you can all see it. I'm just jumping into the middle of our PI document, but here you can see, you know, how do we identify PI projects? What is the quality improvement methodology tool? And a tip that I share with a lot of stroke coordinators that I work with is to cite the actual Joint Commission or DNV standards in these documents so that you're clear as to where it is that you're addressing the standards in documents that you have that helps guide your program. So if I scroll on up here, you can kind of get the feel for what this document looks like. But again, here are the different components of the document. Okay, so I'm going to highlight a quality improvement project as I go through some of these tips or principles or strategies that we learned throughout this process. And my goal is really not to walk you through a quality improvement project for IR specifically, but to call out some important components that might be a good part of this quality improvement overview. So many of us are accustomed to research. We're accustomed to that research that's taken years to develop. Many of the subjects are blinded, oftentimes actually mice. Extensive data collection is involved, and these are the articles that then you know, lead to the FDA approving a certain drug or whatever it might be. The difference between quality improvement is that this is something of a different nature. Quality improvement is meant to be, it can be day-to-day, it can be minute-to-minute. It's meant to be much more nimble, to be able to customize to best practices. You know, an example is, like I said, we had that clinical practice guideline that came out in January, February, then there were some items that were rescinded. How do you take that momentum that you already had going when they were first released and say, oh, wait, we've got to have some changes came out, we have to be nimble and adapt to as best practice changes. And that might change based on clinical practice guidelines, that might change based on the unique nature of your hospital. But really, we should be using continuous feedback. We should be capable of changing mid-course based on early results. You might have stakeholders on your team that want to go a different route, and maybe you need to caution them and slow them down, but at the same time, you need to be leading a team where you can adapt to those changes. You'll also want to gather just enough information to then head a different direction, or enough information so that you know exactly what so that you can use it kind of concurrently to then guide your next steps in this quality improvement project. So for a lot of us, we use, in quality improvement projects, we rely on a quality improvement methodology called Lean. Maybe you're asking, what does Lean stand for? Well, it actually doesn't stand for anything. It's not an acronym for anything, but it just means lacking in waste, lacking in fat. Basically, it's a structure to remove the steps of a complex process which do not add value at the end recipient. In this case, the patient with a clot in the right middle cerebral artery who needs to get TPA and needs to get intra-arterial therapy as soon as humanly possible, what are the steps that are then getting in the way that don't add value to that end recipient? Lean is derived from the Toyota production method, and the goal is to create a smooth flow of events where the needs match the resources available. So the idea is, just because you can do it on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. and have all the bells and whistles, that same process needs to occur at 9 p.m. And so where those resources that are available match. So in summary, you're trying to do better by doing less. So here are some quality improvement tools that I don't have time to go in today, but some of these can be very helpful. We're going to spend a little bit more time today on PDSA. But I would suggest you Google or go to your quality department and look into how you would use these tools, or what the best tool is to use for the different projects that you have on your plate. A Pareto analysis is a great tool. It's kind of based on that 80-20 rule, and it's really getting at, I'm not going to focus my time on what happens 20% of the time. I'm going to focus my time on the errors that are happening 80% of the time. So again, you know, I would recommend you look into some of these tools that can help us with our quality improvement projects. So what we're going to use, again, like I said, is the Plan, Do, Study, Act. This actually came from Dr. Deming's cycle. He created this 14-point plan, and the PDSA was just a tool as a part of this plan. And we've really taken out this PDSA and adapted just in a lot of projects, just this actual tool to some of our quality improvement projects. Okay, so just to make a point, having one of us come up with a list of 10 great ideas, presenting in the stroke council, say, I've got a stopwatch I want to use, or I've got, I want to stop doing this, and I want to have neurologists paged on every single stroke alert, whatever it is, even if it's a really great idea, just coming up with a list idea and saying this is going to fix our problem, that is not a PDSA cycle. We can't just throw some seemingly great ideas developed in a conference room without full attendance of all the team members and stakeholders at, say, a complex, maybe poorly understood process and then hope for a reduction in TPA time. So really what we have to do is start with a process, start with what Dr. Deming called the profound knowledge of the process we're trying to change. So it's not just implementing change and looking for an outcome. You have to know how effectively that intervention itself was adopted. You have to know the barriers. You have to know the side effects. And you can use this information to then inform your next cycle. So this is why quality improvement is a process and not just an event. So one can expect then, I think this comes as a surprise to some people, but hopefully this will just seem like it flows. One can expect that there's actually going to be several PDSA cycles. And I can tell you I don't even know, but we're up to like, even in the last 4 years as we've been tracking our door to TPA times, I think we're at like 20 PDSA cycles. This is normal. It's normal to have multiple PDSA cycles. Remember back to that fast and nimble cheetah, your goal is to carry out as many PDSA cycles in a short period of time, each one introducing a new change. The important thing is modifying an old one. Maybe you made a change and you realize, oh, wow, that was bad. You know, you removed that failed intervention. All right, so we're going to briefly go through each of the components of the PDSA. So starting with plan, our first goal is having the focus being on educating ourselves on, let's say, the stroke alert process, or the door in, door out process, or the door to IR process, whatever it might be. So we are mapping out, and this isn't really meant to be read, but what you can see is you're mapping out what exactly happens for door to TPA or door to IR in this picture here. What this involves is direct observation. You go down with a clipboard and you interview the people that are in the frontline providers. You know, what does registration go through in their role of a stroke alert? What does security go through in their role of a stroke alert when a patient walks in through the front door? Next, you create this step-by-step process map like this one, starting with when the patient arrives to the ED or EMS calls an alert in the field, and ending with, say, when the patient is in IR and that femoral artery puncture is achieved. And think about all the tasks that are performed, and then what's important about this map is that you're fitting it into chronological order. So you're saying, oh, wait, I'm realizing that this step can't happen until this step has happened, versus are there things that are happening at the same time. So as you create this process map, this one was so large it wouldn't fit on one slide. As you create this process map, it's important to look for a uniform protocol that's feasible on days, nights, weekends. Are there interventions you can propose that will eliminate areas of delay? So you're brainstorming while you're listing out current state. Okay, so after you've created a process map, the next step is going to be to more specifically uncover the areas that are consistently taking too long. This step is so important, and I think we all probably are nodding our head because we've been in those meetings where our ED team just says, well, we can get to CT faster, we can do it, I know we can do it. When really, when you show them the data, you know, that might not be where they need to focus in on. They might need to focus in on what happens after CT to then TPA, or what happens after TPA to then getting them to IR. So, you know, the obvious point is, or question is, why would you intervene in an area that is already at or below goal, and why would you spend any energy there? So this step is important. It will help shed light as to where the delays are really occurring and where you should encourage your team to focus in on. So by using a run chart, you can identify cases that went well, you can capitalize on the successes of those cases, and you can build a case for future implementation. You can identify delays. So as you develop a run chart and you look at each of these cases, was there a delay because the patient went to MRI or got a CT, or was this a transfer directly to the ED or to the IR? So again, looking at each of these as a case-by-case basis as well. Okay, so in this IR example, this is still part of the P in plan. We brought a team of people together. I think I'm going to say this a lot, but there are so many important details in quality improvement that are really important to think through. You know, I mentioned having the data lead you to the areas in which you need to really hone in on. The next really important item I'm going to suggest is that you need to make sure that the people at your table are part of the process. They're not just the leaders, but they're also people that can implement change. So you need to have those frontline nurses, you need to have that CT tech, sometimes you need to have that ED security guard who is a part of the process, and you need to have people that can implement change. So oftentimes it's important to have a physician sponsor or multiple, to have an administrative sponsor, because the last thing you want to do is do all this great work and then have no one to help support you lead this through the inter-departments, the inter-hospitals, the system level. So you then create this team, you think of all the people part of the process and those that can implement change, and you call yourselves the IR Quality Improvement Team or the Patient Satisfaction Quality Improvement Team, whatever it is. This group included these team members that are listed here. We met monthly. The idea is not necessarily that you're creating this ongoing team meeting. The idea is that this could be temporary as you look at this quality improvement project. Now, I will tell you that while you say it might be temporary, oftentimes the importance and the amount of great work that can come from these committees, oftentimes you say, we need to keep meeting because we're finding you know, more PDSA cycles that are needed, or let's add this quality improvement project to our agenda as well. So team composition is so important. And during one of these earlier meetings, again, we're still in that planning stage, and awful handwriting, it's mine, but we brainstormed. We said, what are some things that we can do? And we kept this list. We took pictures. We said, you know, what are some things we could do after looking at our process, interviewing frontline providers to implement in this project. So our brainstorming included ideal states. So I don't know if you remember the slides before, but there was a lot of things that didn't happen until something else happened. Now you can see this is an idea state in which things are happening together. Things are happening in parallel. And so our brainstorming led to this, brainstorming this ideal states, more steps occurring in parallel. Okay, next we brainstormed a long list of interventions, and this didn't all happen within one meeting, but our list of interventions became pretty long, and what we realized is we quickly had two lists. We had one of those interventions that we thought would be easy to implement. We called those our low-hanging fruit. And then we had another list of those interventions that we knew would take some more research and convincing. So right off the bat, our two lists gave us a hunch that we would likely have more than one PDSA cycle. If you're ever leading a project, I'm sure you've had that feeling of these great interventions coming down on you and your small team to implement. I'd say, this step is important because you don't want it to all fall onto your shoulders. And in order for that to be the case, one of the things that you have to work on is getting buy-in from everyone. And that's part of where that low-hanging and high-hanging fruit comes into. Low-hanging fruit might be, oh yeah, I think we can get everyone to buy into this idea, to this change, whereas that high-hanging fruit is, are you kidding me? We can't get this neurologist or whatever it is to be included on a page overnight. Or so when we had our baseline data, when we had our process map, when you have your list of interventions, it's time to then go and get buy-in from your stakeholders. Oftentimes it starts at your stroke council, but remember, these projects involve multiple departments, not all of which come to your stroke council meeting. So oftentimes it takes several different meetings, several different discussions to get everyone not only on the same page, but also invested in the suggested changes and therefore invested as a team member. So I really wish I could say that this process is easy and our colleagues are eager to get involved with change, but it doesn't always work that way. Christy and I and some others had the opportunity to talk at the International Stroke Conference in Hawaii a number of years ago, and we highlighted the fact that here in Colorado, we're not herding cats, but let's just use the analogy of buffaloes. Sometimes dealing with our stakeholders, the relevant animal is a buffalo. A buffalo don't tend to go anywhere, don't tend to know what they're actually doing, but they're happy to stand in the way of your progress. And as you think about a project you've been a part of, I ask you do you think about those buffaloes that come to mind in terms of the goals you're trying to achieve, the steps you're trying to implement, the action items you think that you have buy-in up until you reach that, quote, buffalo in the room. All right, so our next step is really, and this, again, still is in the planning stage. We want to know, what are other hospitals doing to meet these time goals? Reach out to hospitals within your system, whether that's your system of 5, your system of 15, your state, some of the listservs, but what are other hospitals doing? For door to needle, it's relatively easy for us. We have the 11 best practices that were released, and this looks like I have the updated document, but in 2009 we had 11 best practices that were published, and so it was kind of given right there for us. But really, I would take the time to reach out to other hospitals and ask them, what have they struggled with and what have they been successful with in achieving the project or the goal that you are trying to achieve? Okay, the last step in the planning phase is to remind ourselves of some of these overarching attitudes, themes, and messages we want to convey as we move on to our next section, which is the do phase. So some of the overarching themes is that uniformity in our process, no matter the day of week, time of day, that should not matter. We also wanted to make sure we're consistent. Every time I'm at this alert, every time I'm involved, I know what my roles are and I know what other people's roles are. Urgency. This was a culture change. Just like with door to TPA, we now are trying to create this urgency and this culture change for door to IR. So that was an overarching goal in this particular project that we wanted to convey. Healthy competition. We wanted people to talk about, what is your quickest treatment time? What is the team you were involved in that was at, door to groin in 30 minutes or whatever it is? I can tell you, and I'm sure others can, who was a part of that team that had that quickest treatment time? And we all want to beat that time. So that healthy competition was something we said we want this to be a part of this quality improvement project. Communication, finding that balance between under and over communicating. You know, I know people are like, don't send me another email, but for others, people are like, yes, email it to me. So communication was something that we wanted to include in this project. And then real-time data. How quickly can we give feedback to these team members involved in these IR cases in this example about how we did and how the patient is doing? And we all know that an email saying, try harder because you missed in this, and this area is not always that effective. So we wanted to give emails and real-time data feedback in cases that went really well, highlighting what went well, and then in cases with room for improvement. All right, so the next phase is the do phase, and I'm going to breeze through a couple of these slides because I think a lot of the concepts I wanted you to walk away with I just recently covered. But in this do phase, this is where you actually then implement those changes. And I'm not going to go into the details here, but round one were those low-hanging fruit. What are the action items that you went live on for round one? You know, we created laminated pocket cards or a IA TPA checklist or whatever it is. These are your do phase, your round one of your do phase is implementing those action items. And guess what? Round two, oftentimes PDSA cycle two, is your next round of interventions. These were the interventions that, oh, wow, these things went really well, and we're going to keep two of them, drop off one, and add these other couple into your round two of action items. So the details of our action items are not important, although, you know, I'm happy to share, but what I wanted to highlight more than anything is that if you have a round one, you're likely going to have a round two. And that's, again, where you implement the low-hanging versus high-hanging fruit. Okay, so the next step here is to then see how you do. So you do all the planning, you implement the action items, and then you study those action items. It's good to look at, of course, how did you do pre-project versus post-project, and again, highlight those intervals in which, oh, wow, you went from 49 minutes in this interval here down to 25 minutes, and, you know, attribute that to possibly a specific action item that you had implemented. And then part of study is not only collecting the data, but then making it meaningful. What was the impact? You know, was the impact based on we shaved this many minutes and therefore this many neurons were saved, or we have improved outcomes of our patients, or we have increased satisfaction, or we have a more streamlined process, we have better standardization. So kind of how are you going to then interpret that impact to the team members and to really all of the departments that were involved? So our next step is then ACT. Right here, I want to point out this green area. So in ACT, this was a tipping point for us. And actually, in all honesty, this is not where we implemented all those great action items. All those great action items were implemented somewhere back here, and our numbers actually got worse. I highlight that to say this is actually normal. When you create change to a process, you may actually have times that go higher or cases that go more poorly, whatever the project is that you're working on. But this tipping point, this is where it's like, oh, yeah, okay, we're on board. We got this all together, and this is what it's meant to be. And then you can see the trend is, you know, hopefully that trend is to continue to head towards that downward trend or upward trend or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Part of the ACT stage is also getting the word out, real-time feedback, debriefs, stroke counsel, some different tips listed here. Here's a public feedback, you know, a laminated poster that could be listed in your emergency department that, you know, you write in all of the team members involved and you write in your previous best times and then current times of the case that you're highlighting. And you do it all over again, and I finally want to just end on a couple of final tips. So realize that quality improvement is constant. You're probably doing it more often than you give yourselves credit for. I recommend you creating a performance improvement plan. I recommend you keep a Word document, an Excel document of an ongoing list and documentation of these quality improvement plans. Sometimes your PI team, your QI team is a team of 2, and you need to give yourself recognition for that. Sometimes it's your ED and stroke team and it's a team of 15. So here's, you know, an example of lists of quality improvement projects that you have that are ongoing. I recommend you contact and work with quality. What's the recommended QI tool that's used in your hospital? hey, can you give me information about the 5 whys? Or, you know, they might have some other great information they can give to you and help give you some guidance as to what tool you should use to apply to your specific QI project. I also recommend you be able to summarize your PI plans. Now, this is very small print, and I don't know if you all can see my arrow here, but basically these 4 PowerPoint slides that are listed in the center of your screen here highlight plan on that first slide, do, and as you can see, I mean, all of those green boxes there, all of those blue boxes there represent PDSA cycles. And then do, you know, some sort of summary as to, did the data show that overall things have improved year to year, month to month, you know, study, act. So have a way in which, whether it's to your Joint Commission or DNV reviewer, whether it's to your senior leadership, whether, you know, to be able to summarize these PI projects and outcomes. And then finally, I recommend you look ahead at national trends. What are some of the new measures? You know, this was just released that in 2019 for PSCs, a new performance measure is going to be to look at your door-in, door-out times. So get ahead of that, look at that. Don't wait for 2019 to turn that into a quality improvement project. You know, add that to your list of that PI projects that you're working on. So with that crash course, I'm going to hand it over to Melody, who's going to share with us an example of quality improvement.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to see if I can get my screen to share with you all. Larissa, do you have to give me privileges or?
Looks like you have them. Let's try passing them to you one more time. Hold on. There we go. There we go. We can see it.
Okay. Well, just to give you all a little bit of information about my hospital, we are, like Larissa said earlier, we're a primary stroke center. We do not have a comprehensive stroke center in the state of Wyoming. And so we have thrombectomy capabilities at our hospital. We see about 200 stroke patients a year. And we do not ship out many of our patients. The only type of patients we do ship out for higher level of care is aneurysm cases. Everything else we do keep at our hospital. So what I'm going to talk about today is, oh, and I have no financial disclosures. So we've been Target Stroke Honor Roll Elite Plus award recipient for the last 4 years. And the first year we received the award, we just barely received the award. We treated our patients in less than 45 minutes by exactly 50% of our patients. So we just barely received that award. And that is one reason that we thought we really need to step up our game and see what we could do to do better. And one of the things that we decided to do is look at our pre-arrival notification and what could we do to give our neurologists more time and also, you know, work with EMS to get that activation a little bit better. And so we actually got the idea from International Stroke Conference in 2015. That was a big year. You know, all the studies regarding thrombectomy. And so we decided that we would start a process improvement project regarding that. So what we decided to do is we would have our EMS agency at our hospital start calling our neurologists directly for all suspected stroke alerts for within the last 6 hours of last known well. And our neurologists have a cell phone that they carry, and that they'd call them with report or what was going on with the patient. So our first steps were first to get neurologist buy-in. So with my neurologist stroke medical director, we met and we planned out, and we met with our other neurologists. We got our neurologist buy-in. They all agreed that they would do that. We created a stroke activation form, and with just a basic information, I'll show that to you here in a minute. And the next step was going to be EMS education, then ED physician education on our plan, and then go live, and then ongoing education. So here's a look at our activation form that was created. And initially we thought this would be part of the permanent record. And so we had a spot for the gurney weight as well as the patient weight, so that we could document that and subtract it to figure out weight for TPA. We had the on-call neurologist phone number on here. We had a list of what we wanted them to do as well before they arrived, step-by-steps. We wanted them to document the time so that we could use that for data abstraction. Also to document emergency contact in case we needed consent information or if we needed to gather more information. We put names of medications on here so that they could go into their bathrooms and look for specific medications in their bathroom and check boxes. We tried to make it as easy as possible so that they would use it. And then last known well, discovery of symptoms. And as they became more familiar with the process, it turned out they didn't even need the form. They would call with stroke symptoms, last known well, history, and they would do the process and they didn't need the form. So the more they did the process, it was just hardwired, so they didn't need the form. So they have it laminated in the ambulance, but it's not part of the medical record anymore. So EMS education beforehand, we educated them all and continue to do so yearly. The ED physicians, we were a little bit nervous that they would be upset about our, that we were somewhat bypassing them or going above their head, but they were actually kind of relieved that we were taking the pressure off of them and that the EMS were, kind of talking to the neurologist and getting the neurologist's opinion ahead of time. And this also allowed the neurologist the chance to get to the ER and many times meet the patient in the ER ahead of time. Then we had go live, and now we're having ongoing education. So as far as data goes, this is looking at our times for all patients, not just patients that come in by ambulance, but also that came through triage. So looking at 18 months before and 18 months after, you can see that our door to CT times dropped significantly. So our median door to CT time from 3 hours from last known well dropped from 33 minutes down to 12 minutes. And a lot of that is allowing the neurologist to be there and make the call to bypass the ER and go straight to CT. So not only did our door to CT times drop, but our door to needle times dropped significantly, and then also our treatment percentages increased a lot. So our WMC ER treatment percentages increased, doubled, as well as our total treatment percentages. So not only our coming through the ER, but also our drip and ship. And I think that's not only the more we treated in our ER, but also I think the more we used Alteplase and became comfortable with Alteplase and saw the effects of it, I think we got our confidence up, and we just, our whole processes improved. And like Alex says, it's never ending. We started to find our weaknesses of triage, so we implemented a similar process of the triage nurses calling the neurologist directly, and so it's a never-ending process. So I'm going to end there.
Melody, it's Deanna. We did have a question as to where did you get the 2019 PSC guidelines?
Oh, Alex had that in her slide deck.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I am not exactly sure. I can try and find the email if it came from the Joint Commission, their notification. I don't know. Does anyone else know exactly where that came from? And they could type it in. I think you can go online and get the pre-publication standards for 2019, but it goes into effect January of 2019. And if you don't get updates from Joint Commission, you can go onto the Joint Commission website and request that you get updates when they come out related to whatever topic it is that you want to receive them on. So you can go in there and select stroke, so that anytime anything comes out about primary stroke or comprehensive stroke, you're then getting that update email. But if anyone else knows the answer and wants to type it in, I can't find it in my email right now. I see that's from Rachel. I could try and find it when I have a little bit more time and send that to you. But
yeah, we can send it to the group, Alex.
Do you have it, Larissa?
We can send it to the group. Let's research it and make sure we have the correct ones, and then we'll send it to the group with the copy of the slides and the recording.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then other questions can be answered, is that right? You can unmute your phone, is that right, Larissa?
Yes, if y'all want to unmute your phones with *6, you can ask questions over the phone, or if you want to type it into the Q&A section of WebEx.
Okay, and I see someone responded. It was an update sent by Joint Commission, so that's what I thought. Yep. So, but yeah, I'll try and find that and send that out for American Stroke Association to send out to everyone.
Perfect.
So there's a question, do you have a best place of where we can reach out to facilities outside of our own system, i.e. I am looking for more information on comprehensive facilities that utilize telemedicine?
You know, some advice I would have for, and I don't know all the details in that question, but I would definitely recommend looking within inside your system, but it sounds like if you don't have the resources there available to you on this specific topic, your American Stroke Association representative would be a great one to reach out to, because oftentimes they know of other hospitals that are in your similar situation, or for that matter, your Genentech rep is often great at putting like people together, like hospitals together. Also, I know in the state of Colorado, we have a Colorado Stroke Coordinator group, and so, you know, topics like this can sometimes get on that agenda if people have a specific request that they want to ask the group of. But if I'm not answering the question, let me know, or if other people have ideas on that too, let me know.
I'll chime in. This is Larissa with the Heart Association. We also have, I know there's a comprehensive stroke center network the American Heart Association holds, and becoming a part of that would also be a great resource, and we'll make sure to include information on how to join that when we send our follow-up information.
Yeah, that is a great resource.
Any other questions? *6 to unmute. And just a reminder, we'll be sending the recording from today's webinar, the handouts that we've kind of discussed, and then the slides within a week of today's call. Also remember that you're not able to claim your CE/CME credits until after the 15 weeks are completed on September 27th. Deanna, do we have any other questions in the Q&A section?
No, it's everybody giving out resource information, so we'll just make sure to have that.
Okay. All right. Alex, Melody, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us. We appreciate
You're welcome. I hope people found this was helpful. Yeah.
I'm sure they did. And I'm sure they would come off mute too if they and tell you that too. Thank you all so much. We'll go ahead and end today's call. And again, we'll be sending all of the information in about a week with the recording and the slides and everything. Thank you everyone so much.